Good evening, everybody. We'll get started with today's class and we'll look at some more advanced things about cursors and how to use cursors with cursor parameters. So let me know if you have any questions. What we'll do here is we'll open a notepad. So if we have to type something later on, it'll be ready. Okay. So yesterday we saw how to use cursors. We can process cursors using cursor for loops, which is the most easiest and the best way to use cursors. So what we'll do today is, let's say if you have to generate a report, which looks like, say, for example, some lines, and then you print the department name and location, and let's say after that you want to print all the employees, emp, name, and their job who work in the department. And then let's say end this with two, like say for example, end the department like this, and then continue with the next department. Let's say you want to generate such report. Okay. So where let's say you will do this again and again to generate this report. So you want to repeat this process to generate a report. Let's say your task is to generate a report like this. Okay. How would you do it with cursors? Because here there are two tables we are going to use. We need the department table and EMP table. That means we need two cursors. And also we have to process. So let's say, for example, you're working on department 10, you have to process all the rows from the department for the EMP table. So that means a EMP table will depend on the DEPT table's entry. So meaning we'll be using some parameters kind of information. Okay. So if we have to generate such report, how do we do that using cursors? Okay. So what we'll do here is let's get started. So what we'll do, first of all, we'll write something like say, okay, how do I print all the departments with some formatting? Okay. So yesterday we saw that we first of all what we'll do is set server output on. So we don't want to forget that. We'll say declare. Okay. Yesterday we saw that you can declare a cursor by saying cursor. Let's say DEPT underscore cursor. Okay. Department cursor. And what you'll say is select star from DEPT. Okay. And let's say order by. Let's go with department name. Okay. D name, I think that's how it is written. So let's look at both tables here. Select star from DEPT is the first one. And then we'll also look at the employee table. So first look at the DEPT table. Okay. By looking at this, you can tell that D name is the column name here. That's the correct. And location is LOC. Okay. Then the second one is like this. So here what we'll do is we are actually ordering by D name. Let's say I don't want all the columns. I want only the, well, we need all the columns. So let's keep it there. Okay. We need all the columns. And then we'll say begin and end. Okay. So after that, we'll say for loop for, okay. So what we'll do is we will have to print something before each department starts. Okay. For let's process this for D in cursor. Okay. And loop, we'll say end loop. Okay. What is that we need to print? Okay. dbms underscore output dot put underscore line. Okay. What is that we want to print? First of all, what we want to print is d dot d name. Okay. concatenated with d dot location. These are the two things we want to print. Now for some beautification purpose, so let's say for example, if we run this, okay, it will work perfectly. So this is how it looks like output wise. And also let's get rid of this department, the last 60th row. Let me show you what I want to get rid of. So when I run this, you can see this department, we were doing some testing and we added that row. So let's delete from DEPT where DEPT equal to 60. Okay. We want to delete that particular row and also we'll commit this change. Okay. So all sessions can see that change. Okay. So let's go back and look at all the departments. So you can see departments in there. Now what we'll do is here, let's rerun this. Now our cursor already working as we want. We are actually able to print information about where the department is and what is the location. Now let me add some beautification stuff here. Let's say for example, if I want to start every department when it starts, should start with, let's say for example, some lines like we saw in our notepad when I was showing you, we should get this kind of output, okay, with the dashes. So let's say, okay, give me 1 second. So what we'll do is, let's say every department when it starts, it should have that lines. Let's say, for example, we will say here, okay, so you remember when we did the L pad, R pad? So we can do that, right? So we can do a left pad, L pad, okay? And what is the original text? How much is the total length? Let's say, for example, we want to make it 40. And what is that you want to pad? Okay, that's how we build our L pad. So if we run this, let me show you what happens when we run this. It will put this extra line. Sorry, instead of just doing that, we'll put it this way. Hold on 1 second. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to make it look like, give me 1 more second. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So what we want to make it look like is every time it starts, okay, it starts with a line like this on the top. Okay. So if you want to end it at the bottom, so you can do that. Okay. Like this. So you can see that it is having some start and end. But what if we put this thing inside like here? What happens is, so now every time it loops, it will be able to print that output. So let's clear that screen, run it again, and you can see how it goes. Okay. So now let us say, for example, after every one of these, we want to write our employee details. Let's say, for example, this is our department. Okay. So go back and look at our report we want to build. It should look like this. So we are able to build this part. So let me run this. Let me clear screen and run it. So you can see now we are able to build the first part, like has the starting line, department, location, and then the ending line for each of that. Okay. Now what we'll do is let's write another cursor here, which will be only taking care of employee records. Employee cursor, okay, is select. Okay. Now what I want to do is I don't want all the columns. All I need to print is the employee name and the job. So ename and job from EMP. Okay. Here where employee number is something. Okay. What we have to do is we have to define a cursor where employee name is sorry, DEPT number of the employee is something. Okay, here we put a question mark for now. Order by, okay, salary descending. Let's say top salary guy will be displayed on the top and then in the department, and it will go on. So let's get the department, sorry, let's get the salary, and we don't need the department because we are going to do that filtering here. Okay. So first of all, how do we tell this cursor to process only a specific department? Because that's the way we want to do it. Okay. So here what we can do is we can pass a parameter which says DNO. Let's say, for example, that is the parameter name. And what is the data type? Data type is nothing but EMP dot DEPTNO percentile type. You remember how we declare our types. Okay. Now this DNO thing we can use here. We'll say whatever we pass as a parameter, use that in our where condition. Okay. So what will happen now is let me write code and then explain how it works. And just to have our clarity sake, what I'll do is I will also print here d dot deptno. I will print the department number also, and also I will say 2char. I will convert this to 2char of department number. Okay, now if you look at this output, we just declared one cursor over there, but we haven't started using it. The only difference you see is the output here. And let's say, for example, we'll pad it with something. Let's say um, how many spaces are showing up here? Some spaces, but what we'll do is we'll concatenate it with a couple of spaces. Okay, 1, 2, 3 spaces. Let's see how that looks like. So now what we'll do, we'll clear this and rerun this. Now it is looking better. Now we know that department number is 10. Okay. So here what we'll do, we'll even get the department number of the employee just to show how it looks like. So now what is happening is this is where we are processing our department table. Okay. This is so what we'll do for loop for processing DEPT table row by row. Okay. So you can see all rows, but all row by row. Then we need another for loop, which will open inside the main for loop. Okay. So let's write some thing here. E in. Okay. So E in. Now what is the employee cursor here? So this is the employee cursor. Okay. And then we have to pass a parameter called DNO, like the department number. Okay. Now if we pass this d dot department number, okay, and let me give an enter key. So you know where our each loop is. So this is a loop, and we have to put an end loop for this. Okay. And also let me write some comments here. So let me say this is a for loop for processing. Hold on 1 second. For loop for processing EMP table row by row for given department DPT number, let's say. Okay. So what will happen now is inside this loop, we'll be able to deal with employees coming from that department. Okay. So what we can do something like DBMS output, some detail, right? So what we'll do is we'll print the department number as is. Okay. We'll put some spaces. Now we'll say E dot E name. E name. I think E name is the column for the employee name. Okay. So let's run this again and see. Okay, that is E name, job, and salary. These are the three things we want to print. Okay. So E name, we also getting the job and salary. So let's print those two things also. So we'll say E dot job. Okay, concatenate it with 2char of. Okay, we'll say E dot sal. But formatting wise, what we'll do is we'll format it as dollar sign we'll say 4 9s or 5 9s, let's say, because I'm not sure what is the max salary, but what we'll do is we'll say 0 0, okay, or 9 9 actually, right? So we do some formatting. Okay, we print each employee. Now also remember here it is not d.dptno, we'll use the e.dptno. Okay, okay. So let me show you what is the output and then we'll discuss about how it is working. Okay, so here now you see, so the output is basically we are seeing every single department and all the people who work in the department, and then goes to the next row, and then the employees who work in the department, and then keep on going. So we need a separation here. When all the employees finish, what we'll do is we'll print a line which looks like, okay, let me increase this to 50. Okay, and then we'll copy this here. I will paste it here. I'm just this is just to beautify the output. Okay, so equal to sign and equal to sign. Okay, I want to show you something here, the way, okay, hold on. So 40. Okay, so I want to show you our report. This is what our output should look like. Okay, so what we are doing here is, let me clear the screen and run this, and I want to show you what happened with the whole output. Okay, so what we are doing here, it starts with the department. Okay, it prints the first department, and then it takes all the employees in the department. Okay, ends. Then it goes to the next department, all the employees in the department, and then keep on going like that. Okay, so here you can see that we have processed we have um, processed all departments, and sometimes in this department, let's say there are no employees, like 40. Okay, but we still printed it. So let me first explain how we did it. Okay, we use the cursor for loop and cursor parameters. We use both concepts what we learned yesterday. So let's just run this one more time, and I will keep that output for reference. Okay, here. So explanation again. If you look at the where clause, let me decrease this so we can see more of. Let me make it this way. Okay. So let me explain how this works. First of all, what we did here is we declared two cursors. Okay. So the first cursor will process all the department, all the rows from the department table. Okay. Then we declared the second cursor, which will deal with only the employee table, because you can look at the select statement we wrote here, which says select ename, job, salary, department number, whatever we need from the table. Okay, and then we specified that the data is coming from the employee table. Now, order by salary descending is just to show the salary in a descending order. But what is the main clause here is the where clause. Okay, so you know that where DEPTNO is coming from table, but DNO is a very interesting concept here. What we are doing is, for the employee cursor, we are passing a parameter called DNO, and the DNO is type is also a column type from department number. Okay, so here we can pass a DNO. DNO is nothing but the department number. Now, when we pass that value is replaced here before opening the cursor. And now that cursor, when it is opened and closed, it only deals with a specific department because of this where clause here. Okay. So that's how the cursor parameter is used. Now this cursor parameter, whatever you're passing, can be used in your where clause. Okay. So that is the step one. Then what we did is, for the loop, what we did is, okay, so we said, okay, loop into the department table using the cursor, and we are using for loop. So we don't have to open, close, fetch and all that stuff. And we are printing something based on whatever we get, we are printing. Okay. Then what we are doing is inside that loop, without going out, inside the same loop, we are saying now open this cursor, employee cursor, with a parameter called DEPT number. Okay. So based on this, when it passes the DEPT number 10 here, so 10 gets replaced here, the cursor is open for you. So only employees from the department 10 will be displayed when the parameter value you passed is 10. Okay. Then what we are doing to print out the details is you are printing the department of employee, appending some space, then the employee name, employee job, and then we learned this functions when these are conversion functions, right? We changed from number to a character data type with a formatting. So we did all that. So we are using all that whatever we learned in SQL for conversions. And then we are ending this loop here. This is only for employee table. So this loop ends. And obviously, this employee table is processed, but it is only picking up specific department records. And then finally ending it with something like double, equal to symbol, just to make this sign. Say, for example, it should print with every end of department, it should print this. Okay. So then end loop and end loop, this end loop is for this for loop. Okay. So you can see that. Now what we'll do is we'll add few more things here just to make it look better. What we'll do is we'll say, okay, so how many departments are we processing and how many employees are we processing in each department? That is kind of end of report. Like say, for example, at every end of every group, we will print this report. Okay. So what we'll do is for this reporting, we'll say, okay, number of departments. Okay. So this is the total report end and this is a number. Let's say, for example, we're just counting, right? And we can also assign it to 0 when we are doing that. Okay. And then we will also say number of EMPS, employees. Okay. And it's also assigned to 0. What we'll do inside the loop is, okay, now whenever we run this, we want to say DEP number of departments, okay, is assigned as number of departments plus 1. Okay. Oh, actually, yeah, number of departments plus 1. We can increase that way. Or the other way to do this, let me actually try one more thing here. Let me say number of EMPS. Okay. Let me try something. Is assigned as, okay, we'll say cursor name. You remember we had something like cursor percentile, cursor name percentile, not found, found, things like that. We can do something called row count. Okay. I want to see if this function works. I'm not sure. I will try and we'll see if it can be printed. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll start with, let's say, LPAD. So let's just, okay, I'm just thinking what would be the best way to print. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll start with, let's say 3 of these. Okay. So concatenate single quotes, 3 of these. Okay. And then we'll say total employees. Okay. And we'll also pad it with, let's say, to care of number of employees, and then pad it with, let's say, we'll decrease it to 30. Okay. Or maybe decrease it to 25. Okay, so what we'll do is just run this for now. I want to see if that percentile row count does work or not. So let me check that. Okay, somehow it does not tell me percentile row count. Okay, there is a internal error. What we'll do is lpad something. All that should be okay. Let me remove this and rerun. Okay, so it works. What we'll do here now, we'll just write pad and then clear screen. I will explain in a second after I finish writing this. Okay. So what is happening is for every okay, let me explain how I did this first of all. Also, let me change this and bring this out to at every end of loop. I will say DEPTs and it is DEPT cursor row count. Okay. And finally, what we'll do after we finish the whole report, we'll print a DVMS underscore output put line. We'll say, for example, total departments. Okay, to care of, we'll print this. And then we don't want to rpad anything. What we'll do is we'll just end it with three things. Okay. Okay. Now this is our program. Let's just run this and then I will explain what the way I did it. Okay. So here, if you see, so for example, first one, we took the first record from the DEPT table, and then we printed all the employees from that table. Okay. And then we also know what is the total number of employees in the department. Okay. Mainly what we want to see is, see the 40 Boston total number of employees are 1, but it is not actually 40 does not contain any employees, but it is showing as 1. The reason it is doing that, I'm going to fix that, but let me explain how I'm getting the counts. Okay. So I declare two variables. What I'm doing is in every for loop, you can also use something like this cursor percentile row count, which will tell you how many rows processed so far in this cursor because it keeps going, right? And it will not increase when there are no more rows in the cursor. So number of employees will contain how many employees processed for the department, and I'm printing that output. Okay. Same way, here I'm capturing how many departments processed so far, and then I'm printing the total departments here. Now, what is happening for the location where there is no employee? Let's say, for example, this is the department operations Boston. There are no employees, but it is reporting as 1. What we should do is we should actually say total employees are 0, because what is happening here is if you don't reset this number within the loop, so for example, every time this loop starts, just before starting that loop, I'm going to set it to 0. And here it is not a declaration, so I'm just going to reset it to 0. Okay, so now clear the screen, and I hope you understood how the row count works. Basically, we used it right now. Now let me decrease this size and rerun it. So, okay, we should not highlight. Okay, clear the screen and run it. And now you can see earlier we are getting one error, which we fixed right now. Department 40 operations in Boston has total number of employees 0. There are no employees in that. Then you see that there is a department and there are a bunch of rows and number of employees are reported. And then you have this final count of how many employees from where, like 6 employees in the last department in Chicago. And then total number of departments processed are 5. Okay. So just to make it So what we did is actually we started with a idea of generating such report, and we generated a better report than what we started with. Okay. So hopefully cursor parameters is one thing you understood. And let me show you what happens is now, let's say for example, with cursor parameters, you saw that you can open the cursor with a for loop like this. But what if you're handling your own cursors, you're not using for loops, then you can do open cursor. Remember open cursor, open and cursor name. So here what we'll do is we'll provide the parameter while opening. Okay, like this. So this is how you provide the parameters while you're opening cursor on your own if you're not using for loops. Okay, here we are using for loops. So cursors are very powerful, and you can do a lot with this, like like the report we wrote just now here. It is very interesting report, and you can show to your manager, like you can take this and print it. So it is a basic text-based report. Okay. So let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, what we'll do today is um, I will get you introduced to stored procedures and functions. Now, so far, what we did was we wrote a lot of PL SQL, but we never stored it in the database as if it is a database object. Okay. So what happens is whenever we write PL SQL, first of all, we are writing PL SQL program, we are running it, we are not storing it anywhere. And then at the end of session, I'm actually deleting this code. Now, internally, what happens when you submit this code to Oracle server? What Oracle server does is it actually checks everything, make sure there are no errors, and it compiles this code. It makes a compiled code. So let's say compiled code is something like a machine code, right? Only Oracle will know how to run it. So it will generate a compiled code, and then that compiled code can perform much faster than the source code. This is called source code, where you're able to read the code. Whereas compiled code, you cannot read the code. It is only Oracle who knows how to run it. Then what it does is basically, so every time you submit this code, it compiles and runs the compiled code. What if you can store this code in the database as a stored procedure, and then everybody who is going to interact with your data is going to go through your stored procedures or functions, meaning now you can restrict the access to users, saying, okay, now you cannot directly touch the table. If you have to do any changes, you have to call this stored procedure, and then you grant privileges to execute the stored procedure. Okay. So how is procedures much more efficient is you will have these procedures stored in the database, and because it is stored in the database, it keeps both source code and the compiled code, and the compiled code runs faster because once you have the compiled code, that stores in the buffer in the memory of Oracle server. If you run the stored procedure once, that code gets loaded into memory and it runs faster next time you call it. In production systems, what they do is they use stored procedures and functions only. You will not be writing such PL SQL most likely. Now, unless you have a tool which can process PL SQL or submit PL SQL, you might write PL SQL, but you will write a very little PL SQL outside. Instead, you will actually store this as a stored procedure or a function in the database. So what we'll do is today we'll try to see what is a stored procedure. First of all, what you can do is so far I have never talked about this, is you can save this code, right? While you're closing this, or you can simply press Control S, or let's say for example file. Here there is a save option here, or a save as. Okay, so when you click on save, it will ask you where do you want to save this file, right? So when you're here, let's say for example save is going to ask you where do you want to save this file. So let's say for example on my desktop, I will create a file. I'll create a folder called, let's say, PL SQL _ code. Okay. So in that folder, See how it is on my desktop PLSQL code. What we'll do here is we'll save it as, let's say this is my, okay, cursor params.sql. Okay, save it. Now I can close this and I can close this one, and I'm not going to save that query window. So you can see the connections are still here. I will disconnect. Okay, as if I'm just shutting down my machine, right? But you can see here my PL/SQL code contains the file and this file is saved on my file system. So if I double click, I can still see my code. This is not lost. I still have the exact same code written and saved here. Okay. So what we'll do from now onwards, whenever we write our PL/SQL code like procedures, functions, we can save them. So what we'll do is, let's start looking at what is a stored procedure. So we'll say, for example, connect, and we'll open a worksheet. So here is our worksheet. So first of all, what we did with PL/SQL so far is, what was the structure of PL/SQL program? We said declare, we do the declaration of variables, then we say begin, and then we handle the exceptions, and then we end the program. But when you take the same thing and convert it to a stored procedure, what happens is here we'll say create procedure, procedure name, okay, proc name. If you have any parameters, you can specify parameters, okay. And then you actually declare here. You will say is, okay, is, you will start declaring. Let's say, for example, n is a number, and then begin and exception and all that stuff. Okay. So here is how you will write a procedure. And when you create this procedure, it gets stored in the database. So only for debugging purposes, you might write DBMS output, but you will not write DBMS output in a stored procedure or a function. At the same time, it is not like compulsory that you will not write it. You can write it for some purpose. Okay. Generally, what happens is we submit the code, we run it at the server side, and we get the result back. So let's take a scenario. Let's say, for example, what we want to do is we want to ask, okay, so let's say, for example, we want to do something like increase salary. Okay, so I'm going to increase salary for people. So let me open another worksheet and say select. Let me show you what data we have. Select star from EMP. Okay, and we'll run this, and this is what we have. Okay, so what we'll do, one more thing is, we'll say we don't want everything. We'll say ename and salary and order by salary in a descending order. So that way we put it in a specific order and we can easily read it. Okay. Now what we'll do here is we'll create a stored procedure. Okay. So first of all, how do I know if there are any stored procedures in the system? We haven't created anything so far. So hopefully there is nothing, right? So let's say, for example, we'll say, how do you check? Select, okay, describe, there is a table called user underscore source. Okay, this is the table you will check. So here you can see when you describe this, there is something called name. Okay, so let's say, for example, if you do select name, okay, you can say distinct name. Hold on one second. Distinct underscore name from user underscore source. Okay. So when you run this, you can see there is nothing as an output. Okay. And also let me show you something here. Let me rerun this describe, and you can see the type here, which tells you what type of code it is. Is it a function, package, or a stored procedure? Okay, so we'll get that thing too. So if you see there is no output, that means there are no stored procedures which exist in the system today, right now. Okay, so we'll create a new stored procedure. We'll put this here. Okay, and what we'll do here is we'll say create a stored procedure. So what we'll do, close this, and we'll start writing a create. Now there is a syntax here which is very interesting, which says or replace. Okay, what does this mean is if there is a, okay, let me write it and then explain. Procedure name. Okay, generally we will say, for example, PRC for procedure, FNC for function, something like that. You whatever naming convention you have. Okay, so for example here what we'll say is increase employee salary. Okay, so that is your, let me remove this and make it smaller. Inc employee salary, that is your procedure name. Okay, let's say you don't have any parameters for this procedure. We'll say begin end. Okay, that's how your procedure looks like. Now what are you going to do is, inside the logic is you are going to update employee table. Okay, set salary equal to salary plus 1. Okay, so just not too much increment. And here I'm not putting any where clause for which employee we are updating and all that. We'll just say increase employee salary, increase all employee salary. Okay, so that is the function procedure we are writing. Then we commit the changes. You remember commit and roll back. Okay, so this is our procedure. Now what is happening is, only thing I need to explain here, let me just remove this for a second. Okay, so what we are doing, create procedure name. Okay, is nothing but begin. We wrote some PL SQL here. You can write a for condition, loop condition, and all that stuff, if condition and all that. And then you commit the changes and end the stored procedure. Okay. Only other syntax we put is or replace. Okay. When you write or replace, what it does is, if the procedure does not exist, it will create. If it exists, it is going to override that procedure and write a new code for that procedure. Okay. So now when you run this, let me first run it as if it is a script. So it's going to run. Okay. And what is the output for that script? It says procedure PRC inc all employee sal compiled. Okay. What does that mean is it got compiled and also stored in the database. It did two things there. Okay. So let's go back and look at our what we did with the user source, right? So when we executed this earlier, it said there are nothing inside, right? Now it says there is a PRC inc all employee salary and it's a procedure. Now let's look at how to use this procedure. Let's say, for example, now look at the data in our employee table, and you can see there are all these salaries, right? So what we'll do is we will increase, if you run the stored procedure, it will increase by 1. So let's remember what is the lowest salary. It is 800. If we run this stored procedure, it will become 900. I mean, sorry, 801. Okay. So let's see how to run this stored procedure. So first thing we saw is how to create the stored procedure. And then we are going to run this stored procedure. So first of all, we'll do execute the stored procedure name. Okay. That's all you have to do. Execute stored procedure name, and then obviously a semicolon. And what will happen is inside it will be declared as if it is a PL SQL. So begin and end. So if you do this, this is a PL SQL small block. Okay, but it is a small block which you are running here. Okay, now I can actually run this here by running like this. Okay, it gave me error. Let me fix this. So we don't have to recreate the stored procedure. So we'll not recreate. Okay. So I'm just commenting it out. I'm only running it right now here. Okay. So you can see this is already stored procedure got created, and the check compiler error log. You can ignore all this. We'll clear this error actually, and then we'll run this code. And what you see here is it is saying error starting at line number 9. The stored procedure substituted for the so and so to continue. Okay, let me think of what is happening. PRC Inc. Oh, I see. Do you have to do that? No parameters. Let me rerun. Or maybe I can just execute like this. Okay, so I think we have to recompile our code. So let's try that. Okay, so recompile by recreating it. There is no compiler log, so that means compilation was successful. Let's put this in comments. And then put this in comments like that. And then let's just execute the stored procedure. Okay. Okay, fine. So this is how you create the stored procedure. This is how you create it, and this is how you run it. Okay. Now you can see here output is PLSQL stored procedure, PLSQL procedure successfully completed. It just looks like PL SQL code earlier. But what it did internally, if you run this particular command again, you see how it increased everybody's salary by 1. Okay. So let me run this again just to show you what is happening. And again, it was successful running. And without doing anything other than simple execute a stored procedure, we are updating the salary. We are increasing the salary of all employees. Okay. But what if you want to give the employee number, let's say EMPNO, okay, we want to give the employee number, and then based on the employee number, I want to increase the salary. Okay, here what we'll do, we can do, we can just leave this alone. This is our first stored procedure. Okay, let's write another stored procedure. Let's leave this alone here. And what we'll do is we'll not worry about this. Okay, we'll take some parts of it, and then we'll write a new stored procedure here called SQL worksheet. Okay, so let's create another stored procedure, and let's not write the execute right now. Create or replace. Okay, procedure increase employee sal. Okay, now here, instead of just saying I want to increase for everybody, I will say what is the employee number for which I want to increase the salary. Okay, ENO. And what is the, so ENO is a variable. And what is the declaration we have to do? Remember, employee table, EMPNO, percentile, type. Okay, so this is how we declare the types. And let's say now what we are doing is for this stored procedure, I'm going to define two parameters. Okay. And what is the increment of salary, right? Inc underscore sal. What is the increment of the salary? And it is an employee salary type, percentile type. Okay. Is, we'll say begin update employee set salary equal to salary plus. Now here what I'm doing is I'm actually passing it as a variable. So we'll just take that, and where clause where employee number. Okay, so you remember EMPNO equal to, this is the parameter we passed. Okay, we commit. Now, what if there was error? Okay, exception when others. Okay, then I don't want to do anything. Just wanted to handle the exceptions if they occur. Okay, so this is how you write a stored procedure where you have parameters. Let's say we are passing two parameters here. So we are going to increment salary for a specific employee, and also we are telling how much to increase. Okay. So now what we'll do, we'll create this stored procedure by running it. Okay. And remember what we did here is this is a new name we used. This is a different name. Okay. That means if you go back and check in your user source, you should see that there are two stored procedures now. Each procedure will do a specific task. Okay. So now what we'll do with this stored procedure, what we are going to do is let's comment this out again, and we are going to execute this stored procedure by writing execute execute. Okay, procedure name. What are the two parameters we have to pass? Remember, first one is the employee number. Okay, so we have to pass the employee number. Now here you can see the SQL developer is already telling you that you need to pass employee number and increment salary. Okay, so it is telling you there are two things it is expecting. Now salary increment is 5. Let's say who is the employee number, that will go here and query the table. And what we'll do is let's say take this James, which is 7900 is the employee number. 7900. Okay. So now if I run this, you can see I'm passing specific parameters to the procedure, and inside the procedure I'm doing whatever it has to do. And also I can put some more checks. We will do the checks later on, but what we'll do is first of all check whether that increment happened or not. You can see that it is 957 right now. James 957. Let's run this stored procedure one more time and go back and query, and let's see if it is become 962. See, $5 increase every time we run it. Now let's say we want to put some more logic in here. What we'll do is we'll create a if statement. Okay, if now if at all the increment of salary, like say we don't want to create a misuse scenario, right? We don't want to give more than $100 increment, let's say. Okay, if it is less than $100, then do it. Then do this update. Okay, then do this update. So what we'll do, update commit and if. It is always a good idea to control it within your code. So now what will happen is if at all you give more than $100 increment, it will not update the table. Okay, so let's run the script. Procedure got compiled again. And now let's run it by commenting the procedure code and uncommenting the execute code. Okay. So what we'll do, we'll generate two execute statements here. Okay. One will give, let's say 50, $50 increment. Okay. And then other one will give $500 increment. So I want to show you what happens if we run each of these. So first of all, let's see what is the current salary. And also here, what I can do is where EMP equal to 7900. So we don't see too much data. What we'll do is we'll just run this. And you can see current salary is $962. So let's run it for $50 upgrade. Okay, we are going to increment it by 50. By running it, it executed. Okay, so now if we run this and we'll see it became $50 more, okay, from the previous value. But we cannot increment 500. Even though we have privilege to increment, we cannot give whatever we want because it's already restricted. You can see that it did not change. Even though I gave 500, it didn't change. But if I give anything less than 100, it will work. So if I give another 50, so right now it is 1012, but if you run it again, you can see that it became 1062. So what we did is we actually implemented a business rule within our stored procedure, and it controls very well. Like, you cannot give whatever high amounts of salary to the people, but you're able to control how much you're giving. Now let us say we want to take this to a next level. Okay, what we want to do is we'll write this stored procedure. Let me open another window just to keep this clean. Okay, what we want to know is there is something called, okay, let me clean this up and let me remove that. We don't need for now. In the stored procedures, you see how you can pass multiple parameters, and these parameters are called in parameters. So there are something called in parameters. Okay, and we did not write them earlier, but why I'm writing that now is here I want to say what is the new salary. Okay, salary is out variable and it is also of the type salary. Okay, so let me just say new salary. And also just to show you something, it's nothing to do with what this is, but we'll say what is the en. En is nothing but ename, and this is also out variable. We'll say employee dot. Okay, let me show you something here. What we can do is we'll write this in a new line. Okay, let's say we'll write all the parameters in the new line. Okay, this is emp dot ename percentile type. Okay, and all the all the variable declaration we haven't hard coded, so which is good. So I will also separate this thing into two lines. We have in variables and out variables. Okay, so here these two are in variables which are taking the data into the procedure. Out variables will take the data out of the procedure. Okay. So here what we'll do, we'll keep all this logic, which is all good. Okay. We'll increment the user given salary. But after increment, what we'll do is, okay, here, let's say, for example, here I'm assuming that there is no error. So what we'll do, select. Okay. Now after committing, right, select sal comma ename into, we already know this syntax, new underscore sal. We already saw in the PL SQL area from EMP table where EMP-NO, now based on our input parameter ENO, right? We are figuring out who got this salary upgrade. Okay. So that will print outside. So let's say, for example, now here, this stored procedure will also send some details back. Okay. If at all there is error, then I will set these as null. Okay. Actually, we don't have to do anything. We'll just leave it that way. And any errors are handled here. So now let's run this stored procedure. And also you can see here this, we don't want to overwrite the previous stored procedure. So we'll say procedure increment employee salary underscore tell ename. Okay. So tell ename just specifies that it is going to tell me what is the employee name and salary, new salary. Okay. Also, we can do one more thing. Oh yeah, that's all. That's all. So what we'll do is we'll run this and we'll create the stored procedure. You can see it created the stored procedure. You can go back here and say, okay, what stored procedures do we have? You can see that there is a new stored procedure. So now what we'll do, we'll see how to run this stored procedure because now we have in variables and out variables and XYZ stuff, right? So what we'll do, oh, sorry, this end should be inside, not outside. Okay. Now, instead of running it this way, what we'll do is we'll say declare, we'll write a small PLSQL block here, begin and end. Okay. And now we need two variables. So first of all, we can use this variables. Okay. Simple variables. We'll say n sal and n en. Okay. And these are nothing but employee salary type. And these are two variables. Okay. Employee name type. And then Here what we'll do is we'll execute, but executing with input variables as 7950 is the input variables. We also need to pass the output variables, okay, which will, whatever data comes back, meaning whatever return values will be stored back into these variables. Now we'll do few things here. First of all, what we'll do is dbms underscore output dot put underscore line. And as soon as you write, it's always a good idea to write set server output on. Now here we are not learning anything new. This PL SQL you already know. Okay. So what we'll do here is we'll say, for example, print what is the nsal concatenate with nen. Okay. So what is that before and what is that after? We'll print both. So let's say, for example, here we'll print the nen first, and we'll take this dbms output here, we'll paste it, and we are done with the code. Okay. So now if we run this, what it is going to do, okay, so this script, what it is going to do is it is going to declare two variables. Okay, here out is not there, out is only in the stored procedure. And then we are going to print the value first, then we are going to execute the stored procedure, and then we're going to come back. Okay, here, now that it is inside the PL SQL, looks like we don't need this execute keyword. Okay, it will automatically detect that this is a stored procedure. These are the two parameters you're passing. These are the two parameters for output, and then it is going to print those values back. Okay, so now let me decrease this and run it. Finally, we got error. That is very good. Let me see what is the error. Wrong number of types in the wrong number of arguments in the call. Okay. So let me see what's happening in the procedure. Okay, looks like I must have done a mistake here. New salary EN, that is employee salary type and employee name type. Okay, that is good. A new salary and an EN, that is also good. And then we are passing these variables and we are printing the output. So let's see what is going on here. Says wrong number of types of arguments in a call. Oh, okay, here I know. Do you know what is the error? We are supposed to call this stored procedure. Okay, stored procedure name is underscore tell name, tell ename is the name, and here we are calling a different stored procedure. That's the bug. So let me run the right stored procedure with the right parameters. Now when I run this code, okay, you can see James' salary now has been increased. Okay, so you can see James earlier. Okay, James earlier had, I don't know what he had. So let's run this again. Imagine James has 1112 salary, and after we run this code, what will happen is it gets increased by 50 and the new salary is displayed and the employee name is displayed. So what we did in this stored procedure is we are actually able to send two parameters in. We are able to send the two parameters as in variables and two parameters as out variables. Okay. And this stored procedure is very efficient. This is already stored inside the database. And also you can see here, so if condition will control how much upgrade you can give. You cannot give more than 100 right now. You can also write a complicated logic of get what is the current salary and you cannot increase more than 10% of that and all that stuff. And then it is also able to send the details back from the procedure to calling PLSQL code. Now this code can be executed from anywhere. Let's say, for example, you have a Java program, and Java program can run this and do the procedure calling. Okay, so whoever is using, the users will not be able to directly touch the database table, the data in the table, but they will have to go through our business logic and they have to go through our stored procedure. There is one last thing for today. What I will do is here, if you see, how will we figure out? So here, if you see what stored procedures we have under Scott user, okay. So you can see if you look at this list of things, you will see all these indexes, packages, procedures, functions. If you look at these procedures, if you expand the procedures, you will see there are three procedures. And let's say if you click on this, okay, it shows what is the code written for that stored procedure. It is actually opening. Now, actually, let me close all this. And what I'm going to do is I need to save all this. Okay. So actually, we don't have to save because we can always get it back from the stored procedure code. So I'm going to just close all the windows we had open, worksheet windows. And what I will do is I will go back to connections here. And then if I click on a stored procedure, you can see the stored procedure code, how that stored procedure was written. You should always comment inside the code, and you can see code references. If anybody is referencing this code anywhere else, any errors, dependencies, it tells you that this particular stored procedure is dependent on the EMP table, Scott user, and it's a table it is depending on. What is the object ID? Is the stored procedure, is this table valid? And it says it is valid, and the table is a table type. And then any grants, any profiles, and all that stuff. And you can see all the other details. Let's say when was this created, when was this stored proc created, what is the last DDL change, like last update change, and what is the timestamp of last change, what is the current status, is it valid or not. It has other things in there, like say for example, any PLSQL warnings, disable all, and all that stuff. So in any case, using SQL Developer, it is very easy to look at this. So you can easily figure out what stored procedures you have. Like just clicking on a stored procedure, I didn't even double click. It shows what is the stored procedure code, how it was created. And clicking on these details here, it shows me all the details about when this stored procedure was created, when it was modified last, what is the status of the stored procedure, like the status, is it valid or not. Everything is displayed. Okay. So any questions? Okay, then good night.